Hello. Hi, you guys. Um, can you guys hear me first? Somebody just put in the chat if you can hear me. And okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys. Thank you for letting me know. Oh my goodness. I asked in the chat where are you guys from, and I'm blown away. New Zealand, Australia, Egypt, Canada, all over the US, New York. Oh, so exciting. Venezuela. Oh my God. So fun. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to do this. I can't even tell you. And I am so proud of you. I really am so proud of you guys for showing up for yourselves because there are a lot of people who are unhappy in their current careers, in their current lives. I think the Gallup poll's latest poll is something like 70% of people don't like what they do, which is sad and not that surprising. And yet, most people have sort of resigned to the fact that, like, this is it. Work sucks, life sucks. I'm just going to deal with it. And I think the fact that you have made the choice to show up, to spend your evening or morning, wherever you are, with me means the world to me. And I think that you should take a moment to be really proud of yourself. I want to give you a short intro to me. Oh, wait, okay. You guys can hear me. Somebody said they can't hear. So I just want to make sure that that's maybe, okay, perfect. I'm going to give you guys a short introduction into me. I know a lot of you are familiar with me, but there are a lot of new people that have come to the challenge that may not know me or the podcast. So I'm going to give you a short window into who I am. My name is Goli Kalkaran, and like many of you, like many people, I sort of did what I was told my whole life. I was a good student. I put my head down. I worked hard, and I got to the promised land. I was successful, quote unquote, and I made it as a lawyer. That's all I had ever really worked for. That's all I'd ever said I wanted to do. And I got there and I was extremely unhappy. And I was unhappy pretty much from the beginning. I knew I was unhappy. And yet I worked as a lawyer for 7 years. And it wasn't until 2014 when I decided to quit. And I quit without having any idea what I wanted to do, where I was going to go. I truly thought that I had no interests and or passions. I was really lost. I felt very embarrassed and ashamed for a long time because I felt as though I had somehow failed, that I couldn't cut it. I thought I was being judged, and I likely was being judged by a lot of my ex-coworkers or classmates, my family. I felt a lot of, let's just say I went through a very dark period in my life. And through that, really had to do a lot of inner work. I did a lot of mindset work. It's how I found thought work. And I will save you the whole saga of what happened from 2014. We'll talk about that throughout the next 4 days. But I jumped into entrepreneurship. I started a photo booth company that I'll tell you about later. That led me to starting a podcast in 2018 called Lessons from a Quitter. So if you're new to me and you like what happens in this challenge, I give a ton of free content on my podcast. It's all mindset stuff. There's tons of interviews with other people who have quit that will be inspirational, that will show you kind of what other people have done. So you can check out the podcast. And that has led me to here, right? In the last couple of years, I've built up the podcast. I became certified as a life and mindset coach, and I have transformed my life. And my mission is to help as many people get unstuck and get out of that place that I was in, that feeling of lost, that feeling of not knowing what else to do, feeling there was like no hope, the shame and embarrassment and all of that stuff. And so that's really what my goal is with these 4 days. It is full of strategy and lots of information. I had some people ask on my TikTok, and I think a couple of other DMs I got where people were saying, like, why is this free? Are you trying to sell something? Which I totally understand. I think a lot of us have maybe gone to free webinars or challenges, and it seems like there is a lot of kind of an overview and not a lot of meat. It's a little bit more fluff, and it's like, hey, buy my course and you can have this information. That is not what we're going to do this week. To be completely transparent, because I don't want to hide anything, I definitely will tell you about my group program at the end of this on Thursday. But just for like reference, my group program is a very intense, high-touch program for 6 months, and I only have 33 spots. I already have 90 people on the waiting list. I have 1,400 people signed up for this challenge. There are a lot of people have told me they can't make it. They're going to watch on replays. I say all this to say that I don't have anything where I'm trying to funnel a bunch of people into buying a $100 course that I have. I have nothing to sell you. Some of you may be interested in that group program, and that's great, but the vast majority aren't, or it's not going to be right for you, or you're not going to qualify. Totally fine. My point in doing these challenges, which I try to do at least once or twice a year, is to just help you in the best way I can, is to really try to get as many people on a path that they're going to love, to get them kind of out of their own way and brainstorming and figuring out what it is they actually want. So we're going to actually, and we might have too much information. I actually think the problem is it's sort of drinking water out of a fire hose. So you'll get the replays. You can watch as many times as you want. And I really want to give you as much information as I can to help you kind of get on the road. Now, I realize that you guys are posting some questions and stuff. Deanna is in the chat and she will help you guys. I get distracted as easily as a squirrel. I get distracted very easily. So I won't be monitoring the chat. If you're asking me a question, I'll try to get to them at the end. And I think there's a way to maybe mark it as a question. So if you could do that, that would be helpful. And at the end, we can talk about some of the questions that you have. But Deanna can handle some of the questions that you guys might be putting in there. And I'll try to get to them, like I said, at the end. Okay, so let's jump in. Oh, 1 second. Okay. What we're going to cover, and I've talked about it in the emails, and you've probably seen, is today we're going to look at where you are right now and why that's important, right? If you guys do know me, if you're familiar with the podcast, or my TikTok, I'm obsessed with mindset, right? It's the thing that stops every one of us. And so all of these are going to be related. Everything will be relevant to all of you because we all make these same mistakes. We all have these faulty thinkings. It might be relevant in another area, but it will be relevant. But we're going to start with people that feel very stuck where they are right now. Like, I can't change my job. I'll never replace my salary. I have too much debt. I can't leave, right? And then tomorrow, we're going to talk about where you want to go. And that's going to be actually, I think the assignments from tomorrow are the most helpful in helping you figure out what kind of a life you want and how do you brainstorm and how do you create that vision and figure out what it is you want to go after. Day 3 is going to be, how do we get there? How do we make a decision? So that for all of my people that have too many interests, too many things they want to do, how do we make a decision and how do we start? And then day 4 is all the mindset, right? We know what we want. We know how to get there, but we're going to stop ourselves because of procrastination, because of self-sabotage, all of that stuff. And here's the little thing though. Again, it's all relevant to all of you. And even if you are, let's say here, unfortunately for you and for all of us, our brain, it's like an ascension model. Your brain never takes a day off. So if you're here right now, as soon as you figure out how to get unstuck from like where you are, your brain's just going to go to like, oh my God, but now I don't know what I should do, right? Like, okay, now I can leave my job, but what do I do? Then when you get to, what do I do? It's going to be like, okay, I know what I want to do, but now how do I do it? I have no idea how I want to do it, right? And then it's like, well, I know what I should be doing and how to get there, but I can't get myself to do it. So it all will become relevant at some point in your journey. So I really do hope that you stick with me for these 4 days because it is a lot of really valuable information that will help you on this journey. So let's jump in for today. I'm going to start these slides. Let me move this out of the way real quick. Okay. Just because I think visually it's easier. Okay. Now I'm going to get my slides going and we're going to get going on today's topic. Today is like my tough love day. And I promise tomorrow it'll be much more fluffy and kind. I promise I'll be kind today too. But okay, an honest assessment of where you are at right now. Here is the problem. You think you're stuck because you can't change your current circumstances, right? Like you have too much debt, you need your health insurance, you can't replace your income, whatever the problem is. And so you don't even get to step 2. We don't even figure out what it is that I want to do because I can't even figure out like how to leave here. And here is my hard truth, my friends. You're not stuck. None of you are actually stuck. You're just afraid. There is so much doubt in changing your life, right? There's like, what decision do I make? What path do I go? Which way do I even go? Which one is the right one, right? There's so much unknown. There's so much uncertainty. And so we get overwhelmed and we stay stuck and we keep telling ourselves, I'm stuck. When in reality, it's just that we're so afraid of like, what if this doesn't work? What if I regret this thing more than I do what I'm doing already, right? When there is uncertainty, your brain freezes. Okay. Anytime there's doubt, your brain's only job is to keep you alive. Your brain was not evolved to make you happy, right? To figure out how you can be your best authentic self. Your brain does not care about that. Your brain wants to keep you alive. So it will constantly scan for any type of like danger. And when there's uncertainty, there's danger, right? And even though our society has evolved to the point where you're not in constant actual physical danger, you're not actually going to die, your brain doesn't know that, okay? It doesn't know the difference between that. And that's why oftentimes like it viscerally feels like you're going to die, right? It really feels as though there is actual danger there. So your brain wants to constantly keep you in your comfort zone, because if you stay where you already know, then you know there's no danger there, right? And so its only job is to like scare you into staying where you know is safe. The thing is that comfort zone is not very comfortable, right? Oftentimes we're very miserable in that comfort zone, right? We shouldn't call it that. We should call it the familiar zone, because it's not comfortable, it's familiar. It's just somewhere that you've been before. Your default brain will always choose unhappiness over uncertainty, right? Better the devil I know than the devil I don't. What if I leave this and this is even worse? I'm just going to stay put and I'll bitch and I'll complain and I'll hate it, but I don't know what else I should be doing. So I'm just going to stay here. I want you to stop telling yourself you're stuck. And this is not just semantics. I'm going to show you how your brain works and why this is so detrimental when you constantly keep ruminating over the fact that you're stuck, that you can't figure it out, that you can't leave this place. What you tell yourself matters. Your brain is an extremely powerful machine, okay? It will show you evidence of whatever you tell it is true, right? If we understood how powerful our brains were, we would be much more cautious with what we tell ourselves. I want you to give you an example. Like, have you ever wanted to buy something like a car, and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, right? Like, we've all had this example, like, or you get pregnant and all of a sudden everybody around you see everybody at the store is pregnant, whatever. That car was always there. It's just that you told your brain that this information is important to you. And so it's going to show you it every time it comes up. Okay. Our brain, like our subconscious brain, can take in 11 million bits of information every second. Our conscious brain can only handle 50 bits of information every second. So think about how much is coming into your brain, how much it's filtering out for you. And it's showing you the things that you've told it are important for your life, to manage your life, to go through it, right? And so the reason this is important is because whatever you're telling it is important to you, or whatever you're telling it is true, it will keep showing you. There was a study done. Dr. Richard Weissman does a lot of studies on luck. And he did this one study where he asked people first to describe themselves as either lucky or unlucky, whether they thought they were lucky or unlucky. And then he did the study where he asked them to go through a magazine and count all of the photos in that magazine, and then come tell, the instructor. And there was a half-page ad at some point in the magazine that said, "Stop counting. There are 42 pics. Go collect $100." Overwhelmingly, the people that considered themselves lucky saw the ad and didn't have to go through with the whole study, right? And went and collected $100. And the people that were unlucky, quote unquote, didn't, right? It had nothing to do with luck. That ad was there for everybody. But when you start telling yourself something, that you are something, that you are in a certain situation, your brain will create this attention spotlight where that is what it is focused on, right? So we start missing opportunities, possibilities, solutions, because we're so focused on this problem that we've told ourselves we have. And this is why this quote from Henry Ford is so apt. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Whatever you have told your brain is possible, you are right? You'll just recreate that for yourself. And so when you constantly think, I'm stuck, your brain has nowhere to go. It has no solution to look for, right? You've already told it, like, this is it. This is like a dead end. Like, we're stuck here. Ugh, It's overwhelming. I'm going to keep telling myself this over, and it'll keep showing you reasons why you're stuck, right? You'll still keep focusing on the fact that, like, yeah, look how much debt I have. Look how my situation is so much more horrible than everybody else's. And so I really can't do it. Oh, that person did it, but they have this, right? I'll start focusing so much. Have you ever noticed, like, when you, let's say, like, your boss does something that makes you angry, and then, like, it makes you annoyed, right? You're kind of annoyed. And then you go and talk about it with your coworkers. And then you go back to your office and you, like, kind of ruminate over it. And you seethe over it. And I can't believe the gall. Like, why would he say this to me, right? And then you go home, you talk about it with your spouse, right? You bitch about it. You call your girlfriend, right? By the end of the night, you're so worked up. You're so angry. You're just like, I'm going to go in there and quit tomorrow. It was something that, like, was small in the beginning, and it became this, like, insane thing in your brain, right? It's because it's what you focus on, right? What's the saying, like, where your focus goes, your energy flows, or something like that. Anyways, you get the point. And so I want you to understand that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. Instead of constantly saying, I can't pay off my debt, where, like, your brain has nothing else to do from there, what if the question was constantly, how can I pay off my debt? Right? If there is some kind of new industry that you want to go into and you have no idea how you would ever start, right? Like, I hear this all the time. I'm too old. I'm too inexperienced. I can't do this. Like, what if the question was, like, how can I make contacts into that new industry? What are some ways that people have broken in? Right? How can I do this, whatever the thing is, and have fun? I recently was trying to do this with washing dishes because I don't enjoy washing dishes. And I realized I was getting really resentful of the amount of dishes I had to wash. And I was getting more and more annoyed every day. And I started realizing, like, in the pandemic, I'm not driving as much anymore. And I don't ever get to listen to my podcasts. And so I was asking myself, like, how can I wash the dishes and have fun? And so I started wearing my AirPods and listening to my podcast. And now I love washing dishes. I swear to God, because it's like my one time where, like, at night, like, the kids aren't bothering me. They're with their dad so that I can wash the dishes and listen to my podcast. That's a simple, example, but it's just something that's actually changed the quality of my night, right? I'm not annoyed when I'm doing it. I'm doing something that actually, like, makes me happy. And I'm not saying you can do this with every situation, but it's worth asking the question. I see so many people that come to me and they'll say, like, well, I can't leave because I have debt. And, like, I have a lot of student loans. And I'm like, okay. And I start asking questions about their finances, right? Like, their expenses, how much they're bringing in. And they haven't even looked at it. Like, they have no idea. Like, it's so overwhelming that they bury their head in the sand, and they have no idea what their monthly expenses are, how much they're bringing in, what the surplus is, how much they're paying off, how they could maybe aggressively pay it off, right? Are there loan repayment programs? Are there refinancing programs? I asked them, like, there's certain tricks, like, if you pay your student loans every 2 weeks instead of every month, then you get 2 more payments in a year. If you do it, like, there's all this stuff, right? They don't know any of it. And so the question becomes, like, yeah, if you've told yourself, I can't because of this, I'm stuck because of this, then that is the reality for you, right? It's interesting when you look at, like, for instance, debt is a good example. There's all these debt repayment communities, like the FIRE community, Financial Independence, Retire Early. There's just different, budget gurus, people that are helping people pay off debt. And if you go into those communities, you will routinely see that people that join those communities, and they might have a goal of, like, debt repayment in 5 years, overwhelmingly, they'll start hitting their goals much faster. Because once they start looking for the solution, they start finding other solutions, right? They start thinking, it becomes sort of a game, like, hey, where can I cut more expenses and put it towards these loans? Where can I make a little bit of extra money on the side and put it to these loans? Oh, I got this windfall all of a sudden. Like, instead of going and spending it on things, because I'm so focused on paying off my debt, I'm going to put it towards my debt. And you see all of these stories, like, I wanted to do in 5 years, I did it in 2. I wanted to do in this many years, I didn't. And, like, I did it faster because you're looking for solutions. The other reason that you shouldn't tell yourself you're stuck is because you're not actually stuck. Like, one of it is semantics, but also you're just not stuck. This image was when I first left law, and I was talking to somebody, and I was talking about how many lawyers I knew that were so deeply unhappy. And I'm talking, like, in the legal profession, there's a very high rate of alcohol and substance abuse. There's a very high rate of depression, anxiety, suicide. The bar does a lot to try to help combat that, but there's such a deep level of unhappiness. And this person described, it was like, and I think this describes a lot more people than just lawyers, but he said, lawyers are like caged birds with the door open. And I feel like so many of us in our lives are like this, where it's like we could leave, but we don't feel like we can. Even though the door is open, we feel as though we are caged in. And I want you to not confuse a hard choice with no choice. Understanding that we have agency is such a huge step in taking control of what we want to do in our future, right? Taking control of our lives. You could quit tomorrow if you wanted, right? You can go work at Starbucks, at the grocery store, Uber. You could sell your stuff, move in with your parents. Tons of people now sell their stuff, like live in a van and drive across the country and have like Instagram accounts about it. People go move to other countries. I mean, there's a million things we could do. Now, I'm not saying that it's a smart choice. Maybe those aren't smart choices for you. Maybe it's not a good decision. Totally fine. But it is a decision that we have, right? In episode 47 of my podcast, if you want to scroll back and listen to that, there was a gentleman that came on. His name is Phil Black. And this guy's resume was like the most unbelievable thing I'd ever heard. It was even more than this. Like, he played D1 basketball. He went to Yale for undergrad. He was a Navy SEAL. He went back to Harvard and got his MBA. He worked at Goldman Sachs and was making multiple six figures. And he was completely miserable. He was living in the Bay Area. And at the time, his wife was a stay-at-home mom. So she wasn't working, and they had twins. They had two young kids, like 2 or 3 years old. And he talked about his wife, and she had seen like these changes in him, and they decided like, it's not worth it. It's not worth you being miserable. So he quit his job, sold everything that they had. They moved down to San Diego, and he got a job as a personal trainer, like making minimum wage at his local gym. And he was like, I just needed to like do something else. Like, they cut down all their expenses. He then went on and became a firefighter. He's still a firefighter to this day. And he jokes about how his chief always makes fun of him because like his chief has like a high school degree and he has like a Harvard MBA. And he's like, why are you here? And he's like, because I love this. And he went on and he's done multiple side hustles. He's been on Shark Tank twice with 2 of his companies. Like, he's clearly very accomplished, but it's just such a great example of the fact that you're just choosing not to, which is a big difference than saying you can't. So I want to talk about this, like taking 100% responsibility for our lives. Okay. And when I say this, a lot of times it triggers people because they want me to understand, like, no, you don't get my situation, or you don't understand like what happened to me, or why I am here. And what I want you to understand is that there's a big difference between fault and responsibility. Those are 2 different things. I'm not saying it's your fault about where you are, right? I'm not saying there aren't external forces. There definitely are, right? Whether that's your family, the way you grew up, whatever, your financial situation, economic inequality, racism, sexism, ageism, capitalism, all of it is there. All of it is real. All of our circumstances are different. All of our situations are different, okay? I'm not talking about fault. I'm talking about responsibility. And this image that I chose is because I think this analogy is really apt. If you get hit by a car tomorrow, it is clearly the driver's fault. It's not your fault, right? It's still your responsibility to do the physical therapy in order to walk again, okay? Like, you have the right to lay in that hospital bed and say, it's not my fault. I didn't choose to hit myself. He hit me. I shouldn't have to do this painful physical therapy. That's your right. But then that means that you don't walk, or you walk with a lot of pain, or whatever, right? If you want that future where you can walk again and you're not in physical pain, you have to put yourself through that. You have to take that responsibility and say like, hey, I have to show up for physical therapy 7 days a week in order to be able to do this. It sucks. The hand I was dealt sucks, but like, this is what I have to do, right? And a lot of times when we get into this responsibility, I think a lot of times when we are stuck in fault and thinking about that, we get into this like blame shame cycle, right? Where we are feels so horrible sometimes. And we, instead of just really accepting, it's more of like, why would I take out that much loans to go to that school? Why did I try to go do this? I knew I didn't like this, or why did whatever. And we feel embarrassed. We feel shameful. Like, I should have it figured out by now. And that feels so horrible that we shift it to blame, right? Why are my parents were immigrants and they forced me to go to law school and they didn't let me like follow whatever dreams I had or whatever, right? Whatever the thing is. And so we continue on this kind of cycle going back and forth. And I just want you to know that none of that's necessary for where we want to go. Like looking at the past, I'm not saying it didn't happen or that isn't things to process and deal with, but I'm saying in order to decide where we want to go, responsibility just means acceptance, accepting where we are, right? Accepting where it is that we want to go from here on out. I'll give you a little example of myself playing the victim in my life when I didn't realize I was. I have this set to post tomorrow, but in 2008, when I first became a lawyer, it was like I was hired by a large law firm. I hated working there from the beginning. And it was the beginning of the recession. And so there was, after about 6 months of like me working there, there was talks of them laying off a bunch of lawyers. And I remember the night where they were going to make this decision, like you were going to hear the next day whether you had a job or not. I was praying that I would get laid off because I was too scared to actually quit, right? I was too chicken to quit. I wanted them to do it for me. I wanted them to force my hand, right? I wanted to be like, hey, look, I didn't have a choice in this. They laid me off. And I felt so guilty about that because I knew how many people wanted to keep their jobs, but I couldn't see another way, right? Now I look back and I realize like how much I was playing a victim in my life, how much I was allowing my circumstances to control me instead of saying like, is this what I want to do or is it not? Am I going to make a decision or not? And I didn't make a decision for the next 7 years. And it took a really long time for me to make that decision and to own up to that responsibility. But oftentimes we do this in our lives and we don't realize it. We want someone to come save us, right? We want to win the lottery. We want someone else to come and fix this or push us out so that we can leave instead of realizing like, what is my choice? How am I going to take responsibility for the rest of my life and make the decision whether there is embarrassment and shame and all this stuff from leaving and deal with that? It all lies on me. And I think when you understand that, truly understand that, and really realize that like everything has to be your choice from here on out, that's when you gain the power. That's when you put yourself back in the driver's seat. When you decide like, what do I want to do with this life? Now, I want to make a quick caveat and say that there is a huge difference between short-term and long-term goals, okay? When I talk about what you can do right now, I'm not saying that you should quit and go work at Uber or you should quit and go work at a grocery store. You shouldn't. Oftentimes that's a very dumb decision, right? Like that's not going to be in your best interest. Totally fine. Again, I just want you to see that it's a choice, right? This quote from Bill Gates, like we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. Everything doesn't have to happen this year. And so your choice might be, hey, I need to pay off my debt. So I'm going to figure out my debt repayment plan. And for the next 1, 2, 3 years, I have to stay at this job while I pay off this debt. But I'm going to do that to set myself up for the long term, right? Because I'm going to work for another 25 years. So I'm going to set myself up so that then I can leave, right? If for whatever it is, like when I say knowing the season that you're in is important. When I quit in 2014, I was mostly going to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I knew I was going to figure out what I wanted to do, but that would have to be on the side. I wouldn't be able to go as fast as other people. I wouldn't be able to build my business the way that I wanted to. And I had to like really work on my patience. When I started building my photo booth company in 2015, it took me 18 months to create a product because I was only working on it a couple hours a day. But here's the important thing is that at the time, you have to recognize that you're still making progress, that you are not stuck there, right? Oftentimes what happens is because it's not happening fast enough, we keep telling ourselves nothing is changing. Something is changing, right? When I looked at my years, in 2015, it didn't seem like much change. In 2016, it didn't seem like much change. But I was taking little steps and I was taking myself to the future that I wanted, right? Towards the path that I wanted to go. And so when you start making that decision consciously and saying, I'm not stuck, right? I'm choosing to stay here for another 2 years, 3 years. And I'm going to figure out how I can love my life while I'm here, while working towards this future I want to be in. That's what I want you to focus on when I say I want you to know where you're at so you can know where you're going. It might be very realistic that you can't leave for another year or two. Even 5, that's fine. But what happens is a lot of times when we think we're stuck and we think I can't leave for 2 years, we don't start planning. We don't actually start working towards like getting rid of that obstacle. And then year after year after year after year passes and we still haven't done anything, right? Like those 2 years are going to pass. Those 5 years are going to pass. Put yourself in a position where then you can start going after your dreams. Then you can start going after this vision that you have tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, what we're going to work on, I'm going to show you how you can do both and how you can really start moving towards that path, even without quitting, even without doing anything drastic. I just want you to know that you, right now in this place, you're not stuck, right? We're going to start making decisions for ourselves. We're going to start moving ourselves, and we're going to stop telling ourselves that we're stuck, because what that does is it creates overwhelm. It creates unhappiness. It creates a feeling of defeat. And when we have those feelings, what do? Nothing. We don't do anything. We get overwhelmed. We procrastinate. We start watching Netflix. We scroll on Instagram. We don't take any steps because we keep thinking, I'm stuck. There's no hope, right? And here's just the one last thing I will say on this. If you truly are stuck, like if you really cannot leave, then what is the point? Like, I'm not trying to say this in a mean way, like you shouldn't be here, but like there needs to be a level of acceptance then, right? Because now you're just torturing yourself. If you really can't leave, then your focus should be on how can I start loving where I'm at? How can I change my approach to where I'm at, right? How can I set boundaries or do more self-care or meditate or whatever? Because if I truly am stuck, then there's no point in trying to work for anything else. I'm not crazy. Why would I expend energy if I can't actually ever leave this place? So what I want you to do today for the homework, I want you to just list out 3 possibilities for how to get out of your situation, where you are right now. I want you to start getting your brain thinking about other things, okay? You may not want to take any of these routes. They might not be smart, but I want you to give your brain the task of coming up with solutions. If let's say you want to quit your job, what are 3 ways you could quit your job now or this year? If you want to start a business, what are 3 things you could do? Could you start a side hustle? Could you partner up with your best friend and do it together? Whatever the things are, start coming up with 3 possibilities. With financial goals, like we've talked about it, with debt. Now, you could do it in 2 different ways. Let's say you want to quit your job. There might be 3 separate possibilities, right? Like, well, I could actually quit this job and consult in this field or freelance. I could find another job in the same industry while I figure out what I want to do next, so I'm not so unhappy. I could cut my expenses and get a part-time job so I have free time to work on this side hustle or whatever those things is. It could be like 3 separate things. Or, for instance, with paying off debt, it could be 3 possibilities that stack on top of each other, right? I'm going to figure out a method. I'm going to figure out a refinancing, a payment plan. I'm going to cut my expenses by 20% so I can put more, so I can aggressively pay off my debt. I'm going to start a side hustle, or whatever the other possibility is. Like, what can you think of to get yourself out of that situation? So again, it's just an exercise in brainstorming. It's just an exercise to show your brain that you can actually do other things, so that you can stop telling yourself. And so you can really see what the culprit is, right? The culprit is fear. The culprit is doubt. The culprit is understanding that it's going to be hard and that you don't know what you want to do next or whatever. And so I want you to take some time to do that today. I would love if you posted it in the Facebook and let me know what your possibilities are. I would love to see what you come up with. And then, like I said, tomorrow we'll talk about how do you figure out where you want to go and how do you start kind of visioning that. So I'm going to take a drink of water. I talked a lot. And then I'm going to try to answer some of your questions. Let me see if there are questions. What if you don't know where you want to go? Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay, so I just want you to see, for those people, like, again, this may not be fully relevant to all of you. Like, some of you may know, like, I really do. I can leave anytime. I can quit this job. I don't actually care. Totally fine. Tomorrow, we're going to tackle what you do when you're trying to figure out like where you want to go. I do think that this agency and 100% responsibility, though, applies to every one of us in our lives, right? There's places where we're not taking full responsibility, where we still want to blame others, where we still, trust me, I get caught in this still to this day all the time. And I just have to catch myself where it's like, where can I just accept what reality is, right? Byron Katie has a quote that says, every time you argue with reality, you lose, it's like you lose every time you argue with reality, but only 100% of the time, right? So a lot of times have to catch myself and be like, what is the reality of the situation? It doesn't matter how I got here. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. And what is it that I want to do from here? And so I think you can still apply this even if you know where you want to go. Let's say you plan to leave your job in 6 months. How do you have that conversation with your manager? I think that's going to be a very specific, it depends on you and your manager. Like a lot of times you don't have to have that conversation. A lot of people, you can only, you can wait until you want to give 2 weeks or a month notice. It depends on how good of a relationship you have. It depends on what you think the ramifications will be if you have that conversation. Otherwise, I would say you have an honest conversation. You just say like, hey, this is what I'm planning. This is what's on the horizon for me. I want to give you as much, information before we continue so that you can prepare for it. Mariana asks, how do we tackle the fear of success? Sometimes I feel more afraid of achieving my goals. I love that question. It is very important. We will tackle that on the 4th day. I don't know if we're specifically going to tackle that, but I will give you kind of a model that helps you deal with a lot of the fears that come up. So we will definitely talk more about all the fears that come up there. Okay. I know I'm unhappy, but my stuckness is kind of amorphous. How should I approach the homework? Great question, Amy. I think if you don't really realize what you're stuck in, why don't you look at what you're unhappy in, right? Is it in the career? Is it in your day-to-day life? Is it in relationships? What you could do, look up the wheel of life, okay? It's an 8, you can Google it. It's a circle, and it has like 8 different aspects of your life, like health, money, work, fun, family, whatever, like, I don't know, all the 8, and you rate yourself from 1 to 10. And I think that when you go through and see where you're not rating yourself, like let's say with fun, if you're on a 4 and you're like, I just feel like my life is really mundane right now, think of 3 possibilities, 3 things that you can do to increase one of those levels, to just find a little bit of control over your own situation right now. How do you keep sane when you're moving slow? How do you encourage yourself to keep going? That is a great question, Danielle. Tomorrow's exercise is really going to help with that. But a lot of this comes from the thoughts. Again, we have a negativity bias, and our brain loves to point out what's going wrong. And so you have to override that. You have to learn to celebrate yourself. You have to learn to be proud of yourself. You have to learn to literally say, like, no, I have done a lot. Like, look how far I've come. Look how many steps. Yes, maybe I'm not where I want to go, but I'm 10 steps more ahead than I was last year. Look what I'm doing. I'm proud of myself for keeping up with it, right? Understand that, like, every time your brain goes with like, it's not moving fast enough, redirect your brain to a thought like, even if I can't see it, I'm making progress. I know I'm making progress, right? Like I just did an episode of the compound effect. Small steps over time will change your life. And so you have to be willing to stop telling yourself that it's not fast enough. Like as soon as your brain says it, I want you to ask yourself, what is my rush? You think that once you get there, you're going to be happy. But once you get there, you're just going to move the goalposts. And so how can I start enjoying what I'm doing right now? How can I start enjoying this more, right? How can I reward myself and be proud of myself for what I'm going through right now? How do you handle when you come from a family that isn't focused on happiness, but you should just work hard? That's a great question, Lisa. I would practice this mantra, which I practice a lot with my own family. And I think everybody can practice with all families. A lot of times the reason you want your family to do something is because then it makes it easier for you to do it, right? If your family believed that happiness was important, then it would make it easier for you to focus on your happiness. But you don't need them to do it in order for you to be able to do it. It just makes it easier for you. But like, okay, that's not going to be your situation. It's going to be a little harder. So in your brain, in your own mind, I want you to say, it's okay if they don't understand. I understand. It's okay if they're not focused on happiness. I want to be focused on happiness. Like I want to live a different way. All of us come from families where, for better or worse, we didn't pick our families and we're going to have differing opinions. And if you're going to spend your whole life trying to get everybody else to agree with the way that you want to operate, then you're going to waste your life. And so when you would just have to spend your energy, instead of trying to change them, changing your own focus, understanding that you don't have to change their minds. Parties, how do we increase self-confidence and manage our perfectionism? That's a very big question that I can't go into right now. I mean, I would say, again, we'll talk about that on Thursday because all of it is your thoughts, right? All of it is your perfectionism is a way of trying to prevent failure. It's a way of trying to protect yourself. And so the question becomes like, from what? What does failure mean? Like, why are you attaching your self-worth to whether something turns out the way you wanted it to or not. And so, and even with self-confidence, it's the thoughts about yourself. So we'll work a lot on thoughts on Thursday, and it will help with that. What are some steps we can take to get our brains used to uncertainty over comfort? Great question, Shada. First is just understanding that your brain is going to go there. So your brain is going to be super afraid. And so you cannot wait until you're not afraid. Okay. Every time your brain is like, I'm freaking out, like this is so scary, right? You're going to understand and be like, yeah, I know, I'm super scared and I'm still going to do it. Right? You're going to practice thoughts. You're going to practice taking steps when you feel afraid and trusting yourself. Like, even if it's not going to always work out, it's like, I'm going to become a person that does hard things. I'm going to become a person that takes risks. And so every time my brain is going to tell me, like, I still am terrified half the time. And I just know it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel super nervous right now. I'm still going to do this webinar, right? I feel super scared. I'm still going to tell myself, because I know my brain thinks I'm going to die and I know I'm not going to die. So I'm like, listen, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get embarrassed. I can handle embarrassment. I'm okay. It's a feeling in my body. It'll pass. We'll be okay. So I just quiet my brain down a little bit by being like, listen, I get it. We're not doing anything that's super like crazy here. No one's going to die today on this webinar. So that's how you have to sort of like practice it, but just don't expect it to ever go away. So for those of you who don't know where you want to go, a better question would be find 3 places where we can take more responsibility. Yes. What if I feel my energy is so depleted that I can't manage to take a step forward? Again, we're going to talk about that tomorrow when we talk about what you can do over 5 years. I think a lot of times when we say that our energy is depleted, and the problem is that we think that we have to make these huge overhauls right now, this year, everything has to change. And then when we can't have that, we don't take any steps. And then year after year continues and we don't change anything. And so we're going to change that black and white thinking, right? That all or nothing. I either have to go all in or I can't do anything. And so the question becomes like, what is a small step I can take, right? What's one thing I can do? What's one possibility? Can I talk to one person? I don't have to have the energy to build a whole side hustle this month. Can I just look into something that I like, right? So we're going to start shifting the focus on like what we're going to focus on so that you can use the energy that you have in order to do that. I can't stand law school and it makes me miserable each day. I have 1 year left. How do I know when I'm in a 1 year season to get through it or if I should leave? That is a very personal question. And it depends on if you want to be in a 1 year season where you just get through it or if you want to leave. There's no right decision. And I'll talk about this tomorrow or Wednesday, I think. Wednesday. We'll talk about making a decision. I think that can help you. There is no perfect decision. There's no decision that's going to be the right answer where all of a sudden you have no problems, right? Whether you stay or whether you leave, it's going to have both good and bad. And so you have to decide what is it that you want and do that. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday and it'll help. I know I want a different career, but I'm stuck in anxiety about what I should do. I mean, I'm not stuck. Do you think we'll cover people in this situation? Not sure I have a dream or it's dreams. Okay. We will cover this for sure about the anxiety. We'll talk about a lot about your thoughts that create that. And we'll talk about how to create dreams, even if you don't feel like it's realistic. What mindset tool is the most helpful for you personally? It's called the model. Oh yeah. And I got certified through the life coach school. It's through Brooke Castillo's model. And I'll explain to you that on Thursday and I'll give it to you so you can use it. Yes, do you plan to handle things on imposter syndrome on Thursday? So Thursday is going to be a catch-all. I can't go through all of the mindset blocks in 1 hour, right? We have perfectionism, people-pleasing, the fear of what other people think, imposter syndrome, like on and on and on, anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, fear. I mean, it's just so much. But the tool that I will give you and the mindset work that we'll do can really tackle every single issue that comes up with your mind. Okay. How do I deal with my fear of not being able to do what I want when I have limitations due to chronic illness? Casey, that's a great question. Again, that looks like, so you have your chronic illness, right? That's the fact. That's the circumstance that you have. And then you have all of your thoughts about that. Okay. You may not be able to control the chronic illness, but you can control the thoughts that you have. So if you've already told yourself, like if you're sitting in a lot of fear and you're already disappointing yourself, you're already getting anxiety about like, maybe I can't do it. Maybe I can, right? You're not actually putting yourself in the situation of seeing what can you do, what can you not, because you're so stuck in your head about whether it's possible or not. Because oftentimes maybe you try it and you can't, or maybe you can't. Then you can make a decision from there. And so what we focus on is like, how do I control the thoughts? Because I can't control the facts of it, but I can control how I think about it. A lot of times, like if we've already told ourselves it's too hard for me or it can't work for me, well, then that becomes my reality. And is that true? Maybe it is. I'm not saying it never is. It's just a matter of like really figuring out what is it that I want to go after and how do I create thoughts that like, yes, I have this chronic illness and I want to do this thing. So how do I do that? How do I create thoughts that help me find the solutions to that? What books do you recommend regarding this subject? The mindset books I have, I mean, The Untethered Soul is my favorite mindset book ever. Like I said, Brooke Castillo has a self-coaching 101 and you can do that too. Yeah. Thank you. Deanna just uploaded the worksheet for today. I will put it on the replay page, but it's being uploaded right now. You should be able to have access. I think it's just kind of uploading now, but once that goes in, it'll give you a worksheet of what you're supposed to do today. And then tomorrow we will be back here and I promise we will go through all of the things about how you figure out what you want to do, how you start creating plans, how you create plans to figure out what you want to do, how you take your time, all of that good stuff. And then we will get into decision making, how you take the first step, and then we will deal with the mind, which is really the bulk of all of this. Let me make sure. Do you guys have access to the download? Okay, perfect. Awesome, you guys. Yes, this is the homework for the list out. It's just a recap of what we talked about and what I want you to do today. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you tomorrow. I can't wait to see you guys. Tomorrow's going to be really fun. Actually, tomorrow I think is my funnest day. Okay, bye, you guys.